discussions now on the first two bills, but at least on the first and voting bill, I know there'll be a full discussion. I don't on that right now, unfortunately. It should be just one on the website. Okay. Should be stuff.
No.
That's right.
Was bill number 1045?
1037.
That's my understanding as of now. Yes. Yep.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. That one, you already heard once,
Yes.
it's somebody. Sorry.
Well, she's saying she was representing. Hopefully, the gentleman I know is Isaac Coleman. Anybody else? So we got 5 people. Thank you. These have it's easier to travel. Oh. 397, 399, that's 37. 397 sub two.
Oh, no, I got one. Hey, if we could try to get started here, I was kind of waiting on Kirby. Sorry, we got so many meetings going on. It's getting that time of year. Mr. Hill, Representative Hill, hit your button. I'm gonna have you open this up in prayer. Go ahead.
Let us pray. Our dear kind Heavenly Father, as we come to you with humble hearts, seeking your wisdom and guidance. Father, we pray that you would give us the wisdom that we stand in need of to make the decisions that would be pleasing to you. We ask, Father, that you look over and watch over our men in blue, those who protect us, those in uniform that are on the fields of battle, our firemen, and our families. Again, Lord, we thank you for your blessings upon us, and we ask that you'd bless America and the state of Georgia. In Jesus' name, we humbly pray and ask. Amen.
Thank you. I know we've got a lot of people who have signed up. It's got like 4 different bill numbers, but there's only 3. At this point, we are going to call 397, which is my bill that we've been working on for 2 years. Instead of, we have heard from everybody, and I mean everybody. And during that time, I appointed an ad hoc committee that reflected everybody in the industry. And then if I missed anybody and they came to me and said, well, we want to be included, I said, absolutely. So it was about as open a process as possible. I did not want to burden this committee with all the legalese that all these members had input to. So we were meeting on a weekly basis, if not more, the last month or so. Thanks, Allie, for facilitating that. Had a lot of Zoom meetings and ended up circling back to what we referred to as draft A, which came out of the advisory council. And then there was one small change. I really don't want all those groups to rehash. I was going to get the benefit just to tell you of the ad hoc committee. There's basically one member that's of that committee that's opposed to the bill, the PEOs. All of the other members agree. So it's like a 7-1 or 8-1. So if Mr. Walraven, are you going to be the spokesman for them? All right. Try that.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Sounds like it. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you. I'm John Walraven. I represent the National Association of Professional Employer Organizations, or NAPIO is the acronym. Appreciate the chance to be in here before you today. We'll not try to take up too much time, but just for the committee's edification, this bill was introduced last session, and it was introduced on behalf of a member of NAPIO, one of the member companies. And what the bill sought to do was to honor the contracts between a PEO and their client. Now, you might ask, what is a PEO? Well, a PEO is essentially outsourcing HR. Well, the way I like to describe to legislators is I used to work for the House. Whenever you walk into the fiscal office, you are their employee for the purposes that you're in there. Whenever you walk back across the threshold of the door, you're no longer you're back to your regular job. So the reason that this bill came about is a construction company told an employee to go stand in concrete. And concrete is vicious, concrete is nasty. You do not stand in concrete. It burned him. It burned him really badly, and he suffered over $500,000 in damages. His employer retained the services of a PEO. And through that PEO, it's kind of like going to a buffet. There's health, there's 401k, it's everything you'd find in the HR office. Inside on that buffet, he picked out workers' compensation coverage. But what he did was he told the PEO that he only wanted workers' compensation coverage for a select few of his employees. Did not tell them that there was a man working at the company who was a W-2 employee. He didn't run his payroll through the PEO. He ran his payroll somewhere else. He failed to follow Georgia law and cover that worker with workers' comp coverage. So not only did he put that man in the concrete and basically maim the guy, he didn't buy workers' comp coverage. So what do you do? The case went through the Board of Workers' Compensation. In the first round, the ALJ honored the contract between the PEO and the company. They said, okay, well, the company didn't tell you about this employee. Company didn't run his payroll through you. So we're going to honor the contract, and that worker is not the responsibility of the PEO's workers' comp. On appeal, it was overruled, and they decided to hold the PEO responsible. So the PEO was required to pay for all of these damages for somebody who was not their co-employee and for somebody that they literally did not know existed. So what was the solution? The solution was to one of our members appeared, asked the chairman for some help in the General Assembly so that they could honor those contracts. That bill got introduced, and I remember the chairman was speaking about that, and he said as soon as he introduced it, there was a line of lobbyists outside his door, 6, 7, 8 lobbyists outside his door. And those 6, 7, or 8 lobbyists that were outside his door were the ones that he created the ad hoc committee with. So he's correct in that the vote would be 7-1 or 8-1 or whatever the number is. But the 7 or 8-1 were all the lobbyists that lined outside of his door that were opposed to the bill. So all along the way throughout this process, we have been outnumbered 7 and 8-1. It doesn't matter what we put forward. It's always been rejected. So what we put forward, what did we put forward? We put forward some pretty straightforward statutory language that would have placed responsibility in the situation we just described where it belongs. The person who put that man in the concrete is responsible for putting him in the concrete, and they should be responsible for covering his damages. So why am I the only one now that's going to stand and oppose? Because the bill does the opposite. What the bill now does is require that PEO, whether or not they have that employee on the payroll, to be sitting there as a payer of last resort. And so what are we going to do? We're going to end up taking that guy who didn't buy workers' comp coverage, and he put that man in the concrete, and we're going to let somebody else pay his bills. That's what the bill that's before you is going to do today. So we are going to oppose it. We don't have any other choice. He's right. We've been deliberating this. We've been talking about it for a long time, but this is really only the second time that we've talked about it with you. So, I'm up here to answer any questions if you have any, but this would be the only state in the United States that has a law that's even anywhere close to this. So that's really what we got. Thank you.
Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've talked a lot this before, and it has been going around in circles, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
You may do that now.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move do pass on House Bill 395 or
We've got-
397. Excuse me.
We've got a motion to pass on House Bill, got my numbers right, 397 and LC 365155S. Second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? I'm sorry, do what? We are passing House by substitute. It is in front of you, LC 365155. There's a motion to pass the House Committee House substitute to House Bill 397. So Sam, your second still stand? Okay, all those in favor, just make sure, say aye. Okay, is there any discussion? Wait, let me call on you. Representative Carter, well, just because your light's on doesn't mean you're called on. Representative Carter, go ahead.
Okay, I thought you were calling on me and I just didn't put it in. So I want to make sure I'm looking at the right version since we're looking at a substitute.
365155S.
Okay, and just clear it for me, because I remember us talking about this last year, and it is kind of concerning for me. Are we taking the employer responsibility out of the mix because they don't have workers' comp? Is that really what this bill is doing?
What's your question?
I said, are we really taking the employer who sent the employee to the job out of the equation for being responsible?
I believe it would be on a case-by-case basis, the way it's going through the judiciary. It would follow the logic that is in the bill as the co-employer at this point. We've got a motion and a second and a pass. All those opposed say no. All right, the bill passes. Okay, just to make sure there's no confusion, because we are voting on House substitute to House Bill 397 LC 365155 S. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The bill passes. All right. Vice Chair Kirby is going to take the meeting over, and we're waiting on Todd Jones to come.
All right. Representative Bodie, House Bill 1037.
Yes.
I'm calling it now. If you want to go to the table or off the podium.
Mr. Chair, I have some speakers signed up as well.
Set this list.
Yes, sir. You also might want to have 3 things in front of them that were received.
All right. We've got the
1 in favor, 1 in opposition, and 1 for informational purposes.
Community Affairs handout. You've got the challenges to implement 1037 by the Georgia Department of Labor opposing it.
Yes.
And then the who's this from Vance?
There's an article.
Is just an article in favor of it. So everybody should have those 3 documents as well. Representative Bodie, present your bill, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to start out by saying thank you for the opportunity to present HB 1037 this afternoon. Mr. Chair, this is the Georgia Peer Workforce Navigator Pilot Program Act. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation. It is inspired by the state of Maine, who's passed this legislation very recently into law last year, and it has been funded as well. So I want to start by saying, why do we have a need for the Navigator Pilot Program? A living wage paying job or career is a major building block for prosperity and is vital to helping Georgians chart their economic future. The COVID-19 pandemic suddenly and dramatically impacted many people's ability to support themselves and their family. The negative economic impacts of COVID-19 pandemic were particularly pronounced in low and moderate income jobs, which include a substantial portion of job losses during the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic was particularly severe for workers of color, workers with dependent care responsibility, workers with lower levels of educational attainment, and workers living in rural counties in Georgia. Accordingly, the Georgia Peer Workforce Navigator Pilot Act will help unemployed Georgia workers to get back into the workforce by obtaining livable wage paying jobs. The peer navigators will help connect unemployed workers from the affected, targeted, underserved populations with employment or employment-related skills development, as well as basic needs that supports unemployment compensation benefits while seeking unemployment and employment-related skills development. Now, what are those targeted underserved populations? They are low-income homeless individuals, individuals who are underemployed or unemployed, individuals with low literacy, individuals with lower levels of educational attainment, individuals with disabilities, individuals with limited English proficiency, naturalized citizens, legal permanent residents, or persons residing in the state on a work-related visa, people of color, women, individuals with dependent caregiving requirements, and workers living in rural counties in Georgia. Again, Maine was the first state to implement this program. On January the 13th, 2022 of this year, Maine launched its new Workforce Development Navigator program to connect underserved Maine residents with jobs. Maine's pilot program is backed by $1 million in America Rescue Planning funding. Now, about this grant, I want to focus now very quickly on the grant that was handed down and announced last week, well, actually 2 weeks ago now, February the 1st, 2022. The U.S. Department of Labor announced that it will award the workforce development grants called American Rescue Plan Act UI Navigator grants to individual states. The states will then partner with community-based organizations to deliver outreach, training, education, general assistance with completing unemployment benefits applications. Community-based organizations include labor unions and similar groups that represent workers, colleges and universities, and other nonprofit groups. States are also encouraged to partner with American Indian, Native American tribal governments as well. A special emphasis will be placed on helping women, communities of color, and other impacted workers who have been historically disenfranchised and have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and other who have faced delays in getting needed financial support and services. Now, I want to be clear. This federal grant would award each state up to $3 million in funding that would be provided to that particular state in a competitive process to be selected. States can apply for the grants through March the 31st of 2022. So that's basically, Mr. Chair, the overview of this legislation. This is a pilot program that pretty much will benefit rural Georgia, urban Georgia, suburban Georgia, and coastal Georgia. So this is a bill that is good for all Georgians. And so I will take any questions at this time.
You do have quite a few questions. 17 lit up first. Which one says Representative Park?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Bodie, thank you for the bill. I think my questions may be more toward the Georgia Department of Labor's opposition to this bill. Is there a representative from the Georgia Department of Labor with us? If not, I think it would be helpful to get a better understanding of their opposition,
Yes.
at least on a few grounds. One, whether or not there is an annual report that the Georgia Department of Labor currently provides to the governor and the legislature regarding ensuring full employment of these targeted underserved communities that your bill seeks to try and address. And two, the opposition from the Georgia Department of Labor also says that, this bill may be duplicative in that it would operate similar to career centers and LWDAs that are
Yes.
currently in operation.
Yes.
Do you know whether or not there are any quantitative reports from the Georgia Department of Labor as to how these specific communities that you identify in your bill are currently being served?
Yes. I would say, Mr. Representative, no. I know our caucus have tried plenty of times to get that information. We were not able to receive that information. If it's out there, I have not seen it. I think these reports are very important. I think they're actually critical because we want to know who are the underserved and underemployed and unemployed workers and what are the demographics. So I think any state should be doing this. Now, Maine is actually doing it. I know they're a smaller state than we are, about 1 million citizens. We're 10.6 million. So we need to be tracking that. That's important. First of all, because if you don't know what the problem is, how can you solve it? If you don't know who is having problems, how you know how to help. So we should do it. And as far as the Department of Labor is concerned, as far as the career centers, I know the Department of Labor are trying to open those centers. I'm hearing that some are open on certain days at certain times, but they're not dealing with UI claims and UI issues. They're dealing with workforce and soft skill issues. I know that the Department of Labor under other administrations were one-stop shop where you walk through the door and you can get all types of information that you need to be a successful worker in this state, which I think we should get back to. Now, as far as the challenges, some of the challenges that are in this document by the Department of Labor are challenges that occurred when then Governor Nathan Thiel kind of took back some of the power from the labor commissioner to issue and to actually oversee the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding. That funding is now being administered by the Technical Colleges of Georgia. However, that's not permanent. That was done by an executive order. I have researched various states throughout this country. Most labor commissioners and secretaries of labor actually have control of the money, and they disperse the monies to workforce and work source agencies throughout their particular states on a need by need basis. So I would say a lot of the issues are going to that. And also, I think that the Department of Labor should be tracking these numbers. And if it pains a little bit to have to do a little bit more work, you should probably do the work and try to track those numbers. Thank you.
For those taking notes, somebody needs to write this down. I agree with Representative Park. Did y'all write that down? But and I agree. We need to get these things answered from the Department of Labor. Very specific. There are some of them on here. I know they're accurate statements, but I don't know the detail to support them all. So I wouldn't want to go into it. So thought you'd enjoy that, Representative. Oh, while we're on a roll, we'll call on our Representative McLean, number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Reverend Boulder, for bringing this legislation. You know, I guess my question is, I know Maine is doing it, and I noticed on line 45 that you said it would be a 3-year.
Yes.
So could you just give me some background on where Maine is, and did they suggest 3 years? And why did you take 3 years?
So the reason why I wanted 3 years, Maine is actually doing a 2-year program. I'm not opposed to a 2-year program at all, but the state of Georgia has had so many challenges with the Department of Labor. We're going to need an extra year to try to catch up, I think. The Maine program is actually, I know the Department of Labor stated they didn't know how much this program was going to be for. Maine is a $1 million program. Year 1 is about 500,000. Year 2 is a little bit less. But we can, if we were able to get the money that's now available through the U.S. Department of Labor, up to $3 million, that grant could sponsor this whole program for the next 3 years. So I would say if I'm looking at the 3-year allotment, I'm looking at in between either $1 million to $2 million. But if we were able to get the full $3 million, we can actually sponsor this program and fund this program each year at $1 million. So I have had a conversation with the Department of Labor and asked them to apply for the grant, which expires on March the 31st of this year. I have also reached out to members of the federal delegation, and also I've reached out to members of this body to try to find, I guess, some advice or advisement on if the Department of Labor does not apply for the money, who else can we get to apply for it? The federal delegation said they would love to apply. However, they stated to me that a state organization will have to agree to fund not only and be willing to accept the funds from the federal government.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much.
All right, we still have a few more questions. I've got 9 speakers signed up to speak towards this bill. Chairman Cooper has this room at 2:00, so we have a hard stop. We still got to get to Representative Jones' bill. I'm told 10 to 15 minutes, so we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left to
Yes.
deal with this. As the author, would you rather have me let some of the speakers go, or
Yes.
do you want to continue? There's a few more questions up here.
No, Mr. Chair, I'll freeze at this point in time because we have some workers that have been affected across the state of Georgia that need to speak today.
All
So if
right.
I have to come back, I'm fine with that, Mr. Chair.
All right, we'll start in order and ask you all to keep them very brief to about a minute. James Williams with the IBEW. Podium mic.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the time. I will try to be as brief as possible. So I work for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. When the COVID first hit, there was massive unemployment in the state of Georgia. And what our organization did was set up one of our staff members, which was me. I was voluntold to deal with all of the unemployment issues with our 5,200 members in the 59 counties in Georgia that we deal with. And I'm here speaking on behalf of this bill because I think a peer navigator system is something that would help to supplement and uplift the Department of Labor when their doors were locked and barricaded for over a year during the COVID pandemic. We had members and their family members that were dealing with unemployment. There was issues with the ID Me program that we had to help walk them through how to take a selfie with their cell phone and submit it through the ID Me, which was the verification program that the Department of Labor put on for that. We had hundreds and hundreds of issues with PIN numbers. Some of our members were actually mailed their PIN number card with no PIN number on it. And so trying to go through the computer system, which is also about a 14, 15-year-old computer system, to actually get them there to where they could do their weekly claims and their weekly qualifying for their unemployment payments. And another reason that I'm speaking on behalf of this bill is you guys were talking about the career centers, a lot of which were closed and locked during the pandemic. The IBEW has a training center in Rome, a training center in Athens, a training center in Columbus, and a training center in Atlanta for the electrical trades. We never stopped working. We did move to an online training program, but if the career centers weren't open, we could use these navigators to put people into good qualifying, good paid, and skilled jobs that actually could move a lot of these people in these rural underserved areas into an actual career in the electrical industry. So that's pretty much all I've got. And again, yeah, we're in complete support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Shorts. It's invited by No Georgia Project. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
All right.
I'm with Georgia Raise New Georgia Project base member. And I was laid off on March 27th, 2020 with 39 other people from a civil engineering firm. And it was super challenging because Georgia Department of Labor was initially partnering with the employer and there was zero communication from anyone. And I also 8 months later was laid off again due to COVID. And in both cases, there were employer errors that I had to play detective because there's no communication from the employer, Georgia Department of Labor, you can't reach anyone. I was contacting senators, the president, anybody who would listen, and you just can't get anybody. And then I was trying to help a man on this unemployment site, and he was not being talked to because they thought he was a criminal, but his money was going to an out-of-state bank. So he called the out-of-state bank. They said, you're not a customer. He called the FBI, the FDIC. He got an attorney. The attorney talked to Georgia Department of Labor to finally get his money. So I just found it really challenging that you're victimized because you're laid off, and then you're victimized because you're treated like you're a non-person. And I just think if it was a federal system instead of a patchwork of different states where they don't communicate, it would just be easier to get paid without reaching out 50 plus times to get help.
Well, I can assure you, if we could tell the federal government what to do, we'd all be better off. But I don't think we can do a federal system here. But thank you.
Thank you.
Demetrius. I'll just go with Demetrius.
You can do it, Mr. Chairman.
My
Good afternoon.
Kufa.
My name is Demetrius Mazakufa,
Kufa.
and I'm here in my capacity as Government Affairs Director of the International Alliance of theatrical stage employees, better known as IATSE Local 479. We are the men and women behind the scenes in a wide range of capacities that make the films and other video productions shot here in Georgia possible. I'm here to recommend House Bill 1037 to this committee because its passage would allow law to be enacted that promotes employment opportunities. You may very well ask, what does a pilot program have to do with the film industry? So let me share with you a simple story. 20 years ago, the representatives of an almost dormant industry came to me and asked me to draft what became the initial film tax credit legislation. Because other states like New Mexico and Louisiana had similar tax credits and were bringing film productions from California and New York to those states. We passed that film tax credit almost 20 years ago, and the rest, as they say, is history, because today Georgia ranks as one of the top 3 states for film productions. And we are now almost a $5 billion industry, thanks to the vision of legislators 20 years ago and what the legislature currently allows in our state today. It moved a struggling industry into a very positive, strong one. House Bill 1037 offers the same opportunity during this 2022 legislative session. Optimistically, this pilot program could replicate the success of the film industry with a similar type of legislation. Let me give you some numbers to go with what I'm saying. 20 years ago, IATSE had approximately 300 members working on a few films that were shot in the state. Today, that number approaches almost 6,000. Our residents who are members and who are working on these projects are making very attractive incomes, and it's a clean industry. IATSE suggests that there's room for participants in this pilot program to enter the film industry through the Georgia Film Academy, which operates a network through the state's technical schools and colleges. And we recommend that possibility if it's the Department of Labor or some other state agency that manages this federal money. It would be wonderful, looking into the future, that this pilot program becomes a real program and mirrors what has happened with the film industry. And that capacity, the film industry would like to turn back and give back to the state the wonderful favor that good, sound employment policies created that we are now enjoying. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about what happened 20 years ago, what's happening today, and hopefully the vision that other legislators saw will be replicated with what you decide to do with this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, well, thank you. Basically, we're really out of time. We're up against that with the hard time. We got to get to Representative Jones's bill. I know we've come up with some things we want answers for. Obviously, this is something we're going to bring back again. We'll get with Chairman Werkheiser after this meeting and see what we need to do to proceed forward. But thank you, Representative Bodie, for this work, and we'll address it again down the road.
Thank you so much.
And we got just enough time, I hope, to get in Representative Jones. And not not recognized for a motion at this time. Representative Jones, House Bill 389. You going to the table or the podium?
Where
You got both mics on. Which one do you want?
the table.
All right.
I was trying to get my steps in, but I'm 54. I need them. Mr. Chair, are you ready?
I'm ready. It's all yours.
All right, thank you. Members of the committee, I guess the best way to describe today is Groundhog Day. You've seen this bill before, so what I'd like to do is go through the changes. And then obviously, Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, take questions. If you could, please flip to line 21. There were concerns that the previous substitute of this bill was requiring the pre-qualification by the department of a company to designate an individual as a 1099. So that language was removed. So there is no, I want to be clear here, there's no intent to require that type of movement or that type of action by the department, nor is there anything in the language of the bill that would require such a determination around a 1099. In terms of, there is a assumption that the individual is an employee unless, and then effectively a test is laid out in lines 27 through 41. Moving on. Lines 46 through line 69 could effectively be called, we could make that another section, and we could call that the gig economy. There were concerns that the initial part of section 1 could inadvertently capture those in the gig economy. That is clearly not in our intent. So we laid out a 4-part test in lines 50 through 63 that effectively lays out if you are, and I don't want to, it doesn't say if in the gig economy, but effectively assume if in the gig economy, these are the things that are presumed. And one of the things I do want to note for the committee, line 47, that there must be a written contract with the individual. So just like we support the independence of an individual to enter into an arm's length transaction with another entity, we in fact are doing this. And then that contract is referred to, you'll see throughout lines 50 through 63. Lines 65 through 69 effectively define what many of us would commonly call the gig economy, anything from whether or not you are doing ride share, whether or not you're doing delivery, food delivery, product delivery, you name it, or if maybe you're just an independent consultant and you're doing a graphic artist and you're doing that type of work. If it's facilitated by a mobile application, effectively, there's a presumption there, but again, it needs to meet those 4-part tests. Finally, 70 through 75. This was language that initially was in section 1, section F, which was effectively the test. We felt as if it was inappropriate to leave it in one of the subsections. We dropped it below all the definitions, and now there's more of a, I'll say, a global view rather than just whether or not section or subsection F was applicable to that particular individual. Section 2, there were no changes. So the bill has passed out of this committee, thankfully, on a number of occasions, but section 2 has not been changed since the last time you passed it out. So I just wanted to assure the committee of that, and there are no more changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We got a couple of speakers on this bill as well. You don't have any questions. So we'll start with Scott Brumbelow, Georgia Utility Contractors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to address you today. My name is Scott Brumbelow, Executive Director of the Georgia Utility Contractors Association. And after further review of House Bill 389 and the substitute, we are neutral on this bill as currently written. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Brett Humes, Southeastern Carpenters. Brett, there he is, hiding behind the post. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Appreciate your time. I just, with the sponsors elaboration a little bit, he kind of answered the gist of my questions, but because the way I was reading line 46, facilitated through a network company, but line 65 defines what a network company is as I read it. So that being said, my question would be line 58. Middle sentence, except where the individual's performing services through the network company. I would suggest language except while the individual is transporting persons or services. And if we're talking about rideshare and you're waiting on your Uber's waiting on his customer to come out and waiting and waiting and waiting, And it also says in line 57, he can't take another job while he's waiting. Where's the independence of the independent contractor? So to me, if they're transporting in process, they're going to reach the destination. That's kind of makes sense to me. And my other suggestion is in line 70, by evidence timely submitted in response. I would suggest that possibly a time certain be considered. Surely if using the IRS code, they have a real good idea of how they've classified their workers, either W-2 or independent contractor. So to drag this out seems kind of extensive and suggest a backlog potentially for the commissioner. That's all my comments, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for your time, committee. Number 11, who's 11?
It's me, just real quick. It's more of a statement than a comment, but I think that the gentleman that just spoke, I would say that the independence for that guy's job would be the fact that he accepted that ride and he didn't have to accept that ride. Now, is he waiting? Yes, but he didn't have, he could have not have chosen to come pick that person up through the Uber app. So just a little clarification.
Seems to be all the questions, and that's all the speakers on this bill. What is the will of the committee? We got a do pass, got a second? Is there any discussion on the motion do pass? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. And we are adjourned and let Chairman Cooper have her room.